calorie deficit. Two words I'm sick of seeing. I'm sick of scrolling my feed, seeing the same clickbait posts of if you're not losing weight at a calorie deficit, it makes you wait a few seconds for the engagement, then you're not at a calorie deficit. LOL Joe. As someone who's lost 20 pounds of stubborn fat, kept the weight off, got pregnant, had the baby, bounced back objectively, I can tell you that calorie deficit is just the tip of the iceberg, and your ability to stick with it comes down to everything that is going on beneath the surface. Welcome back to this series where we are rebranding your routine by working smarter, not harder. Over the course of this 4-part series, we have been doing a deep dive into the science and experience-based tips that are going to transform your workouts, nutrition, and mindset. In case this is the first episode you're seeing, if you missed the other ones, I will link those down below. But today we're talking all things nutrition. We are going to address the calorie deficit, your metabolism, appetite regulation, the decision to track calories, or maybe to explore intuitive eating. We are going to cover everything and how to apply it to your routine. Before we get started, a huge thank you to Element for sponsoring today's video. One of your goals for 2025 might be to drink more water, to stay more hydrated. And a big misconception is that hydration is just about chugging a ton of water. In reality, being hydrated means having the right balance of fluids to minerals in your body. So Element is a science-backed electrolyte blend that contains all of the minerals you need without any of the artificial sweeteners, colors, or ingredients that you don't. The past few years, they have been coming out with this chocolate medley. This year, it has the chocolate mint, chocolate chai, and chocolate raspberry flavors. I've been on a chocolate raspberry kick. The way that I do it is every morning I have my coffee with foamed milk on top. I mix it directly into that foamed milk when I'm doing my little whisk, pour it on top. It makes the most incredible electrolyte, hot chocolate, coffee fusion, morning sweet treat little drink. I'm obsessed with it. I love it because I know hydration doesn't just affect exercise performance, but also digestion, focus, so many things that are crucial to not just, your exercise performance, but your daily performance as a person. So if you want to check out Element for yourself, they have done an offer for our community where when you shop via my link, they will also send you a free sampler pack to try out all of their flavors. So if there's a flavor that you're looking at, you're thinking, I'm kind of on the fence about that, don't know if it's going to be my vibe, pick a flavor that you feel safe about. Then try the other ones out. Maybe you find something new to add to your next order. So if you want to learn more about that, I'll put all the info and the link in the description box down below. Now on with the video. So calorie deficit describes burning more calories than you are consuming. The calorie is just a unit of energy. I will put the energy balance equation on screen. But if you're trying to lose weight, you want the energy inside to be smaller than the energy outside. Energy in is all calories coming in via food and drink, whereas the energy outside is all calories burned via the different components of metabolism. Now, what most people miss is that this affects this and this affects this, but probably not in the way that you think. You may have heard me talk before about how different activities can make you more or less hungry. There's actually 2 videos I'll link down below where we've had these discussions before in more depth, talking about how when people go from running or weightlifting to maybe Pilates, so higher intensity, higher volume training, to something more low impact and low intensity like Pilates, they often find that it is easier for them to lose weight. So we address that, kind of how the energy outside impacts the energy inside in those other videos in more depth. But because we're talking about nutrition today, really zeroing in on that energy in. This review examines the impact of calorie restriction on RMR, or resting metabolic rate. These are the calories you burn just sitting, breathing, and existing. In general, larger people require more energy to sustain, whereas smaller people require less energy to sustain. This is the component of metabolism probably most affected by lean muscle mass. And so when you hear the advice of, build muscle to burn more calories, this is usually what they're addressing. Now, as a side note, both muscle and fat are metabolically active tissues. And so by losing fat, your metabolism will technically decrease. Now, if you're building muscle at the same time as you are losing fat, that can help to offset this. But depending how exactly your body composition changes, the net effect may still be a slower metabolism, which shouldn't be entirely surprising, understanding that RMR is directly impacted by your body size and composition. What is surprising and what this review explores is how long-term calorie restriction results in a decrease in RMR beyond what can be explained by the change in body composition or size. This phenomenon is often referred to as metabolic adaptation, and it affects everything from insulin secretion to thyroid levels to mitochondrial efficiency. TEF, or the thermic effect of food, describes all calories burned breaking down and digesting what you eat. So understandably, at a calorie deficit, you are eating less, you're probably going to burn less calories via this component of metabolism. Something that a lot of people don't account for is how eating less can actually impact your TEA, or thermic effective activity. So these are the calories burned via all intentional or structured movement. These are your workouts, your cardio. Basically, when you're at a deficit, both metabolic and physiological adaptations occur, even if activity level is controlled. So you could do a workout, let's say a HIIT workout. It could be the exact same exercises, intervals, and you may still burn less calories because of the fatigue, reduced muscle glycogen, hormonal changes that affect performance like lower leptin, lower thyroid hormones, etc. Metabolic adaptation affects every component of metabolism, including NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which describes the calories burned via all spontaneous or lifestyle activities. So this might be fidgeting, walking around throughout the day, cleaning, maybe you have an active hobby. One study found that NEAT decreased by 27% as compared to baseline when subjects ate at a calorie deficit without exercise intervention. Of course, you can do things like set a step target to help offset this. But if this is what happens naturally, then you can imagine it's going to take more and more discipline to keep up with this as you get lower on energy. And so the problem with those clickbaity posts that say, if you're not losing weight, then you're not at a calorie deficit, is that while they're technically correct, it's an oversimplification of what's often happening that can lead to more is better thinking. If you need more of a calorie deficit, how do you go about creating this? Well, if you make the same mistake I did, you're going to burn the candle at both ends. You're going to try to burn more calories while consuming less calories. Nothing exists in isolation, and that's going to come back to bite you with appetite regulation. When you're at a deficit, you're going to get hungry. Hunger is not an emergency, but if not managed correctly, it can really challenge your consistency. And so I want you to step away from this more is better thinking, this idea of eating less and less and less until you just blow away in the wind, and start focusing on appetite regulation. If calorie deficit is the theory, then appetite management is the application that lets you put that theory into practice. You still need to be at a deficit, but let's focus on eating at a sensible deficit, getting really, really consistent and becoming really so in tune with your body so you know exactly what to eat, how different foods and practices affect you and make you feel more or less hungry. We're going to discuss the decision to track versus not track calories, but regardless of what you choose, a tool I love to use is the hunger scale. The hunger scale is exactly as it sounds. You are rating your hunger on a scale of 1 to 10. So understanding our goal is to eat 10 to 20% less than maintenance. That might feel like a 4 to 5 after meals, or as low as a 2 to 3 between meals. Hopefully closer to a 3 if you're planning properly. Which brings us to when and what you're eating. So you may have heard people talk about their macro targets following a high protein diet. Macronutrients, or macros, are nutrients that your body needs in large amounts. So think protein, carbs, and fats. Of course, there are further subsets of these, which we'll get into. But what you need to know is that different foods, different macros act on a hormonal level to impact your appetite. High protein diets have been shown to increase satiety and reduce subsequent calorie intake by increasing the release of satiety hormones like PYY and GLP-1 while suppressing ghrelin, aka the hunger hormone. Now, if GLP-1 sounds familiar, that is because this is the hunger hormone that drugs like Ozempic aim to replicate. Dietary fat plays a role in increasing satiety through the release of CCK and GLP-1, and it's digested more slowly, which may prolong feelings of fullness. For carbohydrates, type matters. In general, simple carbs are digested more quickly, which can cause a spike and then crash in blood sugar, which can leave you feeling very hungry. Whereas complex carbs, think those that are higher in fiber, tend to be digested more slowly, which can help to support satiety. Now, this isn't telling the full story yet, because if you go and combine a simple carb with a food that is higher in protein and or fat, that's going to help it digest more slowly, avoiding those blood sugar spikes and crashes. This is why you do not blindly trust everything that you read on the internet, because it may lack context. An example of how you can make a pairing like this would be to pair a banana, a simple carb, with a higher fat food, so like some peanut butter, and that would help more so regulate your blood sugar than just consuming the banana on its own. Now, a note on fiber: dietary fiber, especially soluble fiber, is great for keeping you fuller longer, because once it's consumed, it's going to absorb water and form a gel-like substance in your stomach. This will slow digestion and delay gastric emptying, basically delay that empty stomach feeling. We also know that prebiotic fiber is the food for your gut bacteria, and your gut microbiome affects everything from regularity to bloating, immune function, and appetite regulation. Research suggests that an imbalance could influence hunger, cravings, and energy storage, as certain bacteria may influence the release of hormones like ghrelin and PYY. So not only is fiber going to help you feel full from, a mechanical standpoint, the food is spending longer in your stomach, but also by supporting your gut health, which is going to help support appetite regulation from a hormonal standpoint. Shifting over to when you're eating, regular eating can help support blood sugar levels, having energy, the mental clarity you need to accurately respond to your body's needs. But is that going to be breakfast, lunch, and dinner for everybody? On the side of eating less frequently, we do know that skipping meals can lead to increased hunger as ghrelin levels rise in response to the fasted state, but intermittent fasting can be an effective dieting strategy. So what's going on here? Well, based on my experience, I think this is the intersection of physiological and psychological hunger, internal and external cues to eat. Probably the simplest way to explain physiological hunger would be that empty feeling, whereas psychological hunger can include everything from emotional eating to cravings, eating out of habit, eating in response to portion size or food availability. Intermittent fasting can be a simple solution for some of the overeating that occurs as a result of psychological hunger, rather than food always being an option and experiencing the decision fatigue that comes with constantly having to exert discipline. Once you get through that initial adjustment, it becomes like an on-off switch. You're reducing the time frame that you have to be disciplined, that you have to make decisions. And in my experience, it was a really valuable tool to learn the difference between physiological and psychological hunger. On the flip side, and an argument for eating more frequently would be if you are training regularly, especially at a moderate to high intensity, then you may want to add another snack to your routine to help avoid that hanger that can come with those big swings in blood sugar. And now we got to talk about it. Calorie tracking. Truth is, your body does not know if you are consuming exactly 2,000 calories. Instead, it recognizes relative changes in energy availability and adapts accordingly. So, based on everything that we just discussed, you have got to make a decision to track calories or to not track calories. Before you make that decision, it's probably important to acknowledge that there are levels to this game. Are you just going to track calories? Are you going to track calories and protein? Are you going to track everything? Are you going to eyeball your portions, or are you going to measure and weigh everything that you eat? Regardless of what you choose, both options should lead to the same outcome, which is feeling in tune with your body, understanding your hunger and fullness cues, and feeling confident making changes to what you eat in order to either modify or maintain your physique. While I don't regret the many years that I spent calorie and macro tracking, I learned so much in that time. If I could make one change, it would be going into that process with my eyes open and understanding that calorie and macro tracking is just a stepping stone on this journey. It is not the end destination. It is a tool to build awareness, but the goal is not to always rely on it. Because when I decided I wanted to stop tracking, it was by no means smooth sailing. I had no awareness no trust of my body, and I felt like I didn't know how to eat. If you're brand new to all of this, it might sound counterintuitive, but I would lean toward doing the most disciplined approach first. So tracking your calories and macros, weighing or very carefully measuring what you eat, but knowing that it's a temporary tool and going in with that mindset right from the start. Making it your goal to really understand portion sizes of foods that you often consume, paying attention to how full different portions make you feel, learning the nutritional profiles of different foods. Of course, you can always scale this back. The goal is to scale this back, but going in with that open and learning mindset. Now, if this isn't your first rodeo and seeing a food scale gives you more flashbacks, then maybe you need to scale this back. And one of my favorite tools that I used on my journey of stopping tracking when I still had goals for my physique was that hunger scale that I mentioned earlier. Instead of tracking calories, tracking where I was at on that hunger scale, going into, after, and even between meals, knowing that if I wanted to be at a deficit, I would have to be some degree of hungry. What I like about this approach is that it combines that tracking and sense of control that you crave while gradually building trust in listening to your body. This is also something you could implement if maybe you did start with the calorie macro tracking and you're looking to scale that back. This would be a really good way to bridge that gap. Now, I imagine you have questions. How can you combine what you learned in this episode about nutrition with last episode on training? Are there differences on how this applies to men versus women? What about hormones? That lifestyle context is coming in our next episode. So I do hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said at the start, in case you missed our previous episodes, I do recommend going back, catching up on them. I will link them down below. But before we go, I would love to hear where you're at on your journey with eating. If you are trying to eat at a deficit right now, if you're calorie tracking, if you're wanting to ease out of tracking, if you're somewhere in between, I always love to hear who is on the other side of the screen. So let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this video, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.